How's it going, everyone? I'm Keegs, and with part 2 of the final season for Stranger Things coming out in a couple weeks, I thought now would be the perfect time to talk about part 1 because it was crazy. So here I am, I got my Stranger Things DM shirt on, and it's maybe a little hard to read in the camera there, but it's with us in spirit. Honestly, it's really bittersweet that this is the last season of Stranger Things because on one hand, I am sad to see it go, but on the other hand, I'm just happy that this series looks like it's gonna go out on a high note, and I feel like sometimes when you get these TV series that are just they do really well publicly, then they try to push for more seasons and more episodes after they had a story to tell, and that's usually when things start going downhill anyway, so I'm glad it's gonna end on a high note here, I think. Starting off though, I absolutely love that each one of these episodes is an hour plus. Lately I've been getting really tired of Disney Plus releasing new episodes and they only come in at like 30 minutes. Like great, I waited an entire week for a 30-minute episode. Whereas then I got Stranger Things over here that it puts, 7 episodes out at once, each over an hour. And I mean, that's just how I like to consume my content. So it was really refreshing to me. Oh, and also this is going to contain heavy spoilers for part 1 of season 4 in case you didn't get that from any of my previous statements. I feel like a big theme of this season is people separating or growing apart, growing up, because there were a lot of stories like that. You had Mike and Elle that were kind of on the fritz before she got taken. You had Nancy and Jonathan who are also kind of on the fritz. Then you had Logan and Max who already broke up, and you had Logan that kind of had to break up with the D&D group. And you also have Mike and Will who have seemed to lose friendship since they've been apart for the last few months now. So a lot of turmoil here, though some of these relationships were on the mend before the end of the 7th episode, though I think part 2 is really where they're gonna kind of hammer home these relationships mending and getting back together for the most part. Nancy and Jonathan, though, I do not see getting back together because they are pushing the Nancy-Steve relationship real hard. And, actually, I'm okay with that because I like Steve a lot. I think he's great, and if anyone deserves to be happy, I feel like it's him. Also, the dude is a badass. When he was getting eaten apart by all those, demonic bats, and then when they fought back, and he just goes to town on that thing and curb stomps that thing and rips it in half, that was amazing. He also has balls of steel because when he jumped in that lake to swim down and find a gateway to hell, pretty much, that in itself I think is wild. Then the man goes and touches it, which, maybe I'm just a coward, but I definitely would not have put my hand in that. As you see a red glowing light and then I'm gone. I also really actually enjoyed Eddie's addition to the team. I thought he brought a very fun, different kind of personality to the dynamic of everybody. And I feel really bad for him because the entire town is after him now. And I really don't see how he's going to get out of this one. Because when the whole town thinks you're like the vessel of Satan, I don't really know how to prove your innocence because there's no way to prove in a sane way, I should say, that how these killings are happening. So they're not going to have anyone to blame, and they're going to want to blame somebody. So I can't imagine it being steered away from his suspicion. The basketball players rallying the town up to go on a witch hunt for Eddie felt a little far-fetched for me. In fact, I didn't really like any of the high school bullies in this show, and I know I'm not supposed to like bullies, but I didn't like their plot lines. I thought it didn't add a lot to the series. It put just kind of a little bit of unnecessary tension on certain situations, I felt, because you've already got a ton of plot lines in this show. I really don't think that if you had taken those out completely, it would have changed hardly anything in the season. You'd still be left with Hopper, Joyce, the evil military, 11, Mike's crew, Dustin's crew. I mean, that's a lot of storylines. That's 6 storylines right there. And I felt like those were the more interesting ones anyway. That being said, I do think they handled all of the storylines that they had really well. And at no point did I feel confused as to what's going on. And I thought everybody got a good amount of screen time. I think Mike's crew was the least utilized in the first half. And they were mostly just running away from things the whole season and didn't really do a whole lot. The only thing they've done so far is found where Elle is. So I'm thinking they're going to be a much bigger part in part 2, and they're going to have a lot more to do. Though I did love the scene of them burying the body. I thought that was just absolutely hilarious. I would like to see the whole gang back together. I definitely miss seeing them work together and do things, but at this point, I guess I could understand how it might get a little hectic when you have now like 20 people in this group trying to communicate with each other. So maybe it flows a little bit better with the individual groups and pockets of people that you have. Hopper's been living a pretty brutal life out here, and I liked his Russian guard friend a lot. I thought they had a really good chemistry between each other. I don't understand how Hopper has been walking around so easily, considering his ankle was basically split in two with that hammer. It was pretty brutal and pretty gnarly stuff. It was also really interesting that Max was able to get inside the mind of Vecna, and it's interesting because that means the psychic connection is two-way, so they can learn a lot. You know, hopefully Nancy, well, we know Nancy has learned a crazy amount of what's happened from the end of the episode, but I wonder if all the other people that died, they never made it into the mind, and is that because they were just too frightened to move, or was it because they didn't know that it was all an illusion and Max did? And though she kind of fell for the illusion at the beginning when Billy showed up in illusion Billy form and was like, "You're the worst person ever," but she was able to break away from that eventually, though I can tell you I would probably never put that Walkman down again in my life. Nancy at the end also got pulled into the illusionary world, and let's hope that Steve knows her favorite song and that they hopefully have the cassette lying around somewhere. Or maybe everybody just starts singing to her and pulls her back out of it. Not sure, but we did in that scene get like the biggest reveal in probably all of Stranger Things. So up until this point, we've kind of watched Elle, you know, she lost her powers and now she's been reliving her memories and going back to when she was a kid and trying to figure out, you know, how to use her powers again. And in this, we meet number 1. And this dude is certifiably nuts. We learned that number 1 here was the first person with powers, and for some reason he just loves to kill and torture things. I did not see that being who that was at all. I didn't see that coming at all. I thought even when Elle pulled the tracker out of him, I didn't suspect anything until the very end. I thought it was still just a tracker, but nope, he just murdered everybody. That was a lot of killing. Though he didn't actually want to kill her, which I found a little surprising since everybody else he didn't seem to care about, but he seemed like he genuinely wanted her on his side and gave the whole "join me" speech at the end and saying, you know, "Together we can rule the world," or whatever nonsense he has going through his mind. Elle then whooped him, and I don't know when she got that strong or if this situation in particular was the catalyst for it, but she hit that man so hard he went into an alternate dimension, and in that alternate dimension, he just like started burning alive. That was one hell of a bitch slap that she gave him. I also wonder if number 1 is immortal or just has an awesome skincare regimen, because in the 50s he was like a 10-year-old kid, and then 30 years later when he's helping Elle, that would presumably make him 40, but the dude did not look 40 to me, at least in that scene. Maybe him killing and torturing all those lives prolongs his life somehow? I mean, I think now he's Vecna, he's a dark wizard, so I assume that's how he's prolonging his life and making himself stronger. And I don't know if they're going to explain that or if he was really supposed to be, you know, 40 and look 40 in that scene. But to me, he looked a little bit young. It's a little odd to me, though, that this is the last season since they described this guy as the Mind Flayer's top general. And I would assume at some point, once they beat the general, they would go after the Mind Flayer himself. But I guess once this guy's beat, the Mind Flayer has no more cards left to play or something and retreats into his little spooky dimension and says, you know what, I don't want any part of this anymore, and just kind of backs off. Not sure, but it seems like another season would have made sense for the final battle against the Mind Flayer that we've kind of seen in the clouds when the things like, you know, the thunder and lightning goes and all of a sudden you see this big crazy Mind Flayer looking creature. The music and score of this show is also fantastic. I love it, and it really sets this show apart from other shows, I feel like. And I think the score is something that you usually don't notice unless it's either really good or really bad. And I think this one genuinely falls in the really good category. This season was pretty dark, and I mean, I know it's always been pretty dark, but I felt like there were kind of more demonic possessions and more bones snapping on screens. I mean, heck, they even killed a little 10-year-old girl by like snapping her bones and blowing up her eyes. And I just felt like that made it a little more spicy this season. Overall, I really enjoyed part 1, and I binged the whole thing in like a day. And I really can't wait for part 2 and to see how it kind of all wraps up. And I'm sure there's things that I've left out here and haven't talked about part 1. So please let me know, what was your favorite part about this part, and where do you think it's going? How's it all gonna wrap up? But anyway, I'm Keeks, and I will catch you all again in a couple weeks for the series finale of Stranger Things.